Good morning. Another in the series on World War II Special Operations, and the book I'm going to be discussing today is a book that the government denied ever existed. It's the collection of papers relating to the syllabus of the SOE training establishments, and many researchers, including the late Peter Robbins, were in contact with the Public Records Office trying to get these documents, and were told they no longer existed. And then some years ago the government decided to publish these as a book and make some money out of them, and the book was published by Her Majesty's Stationery Office, so it's a Crown copyright book, and it's this one, SOE Syllabus, Lessons in Ungentlemanly Warfare, World War II, and it's edited by Denis Rigden, and it's a very well produced book, and it starts with an overview of how SOE was organised and the different training establishments, the pipeline, and here we come right up against something that I've mentioned several times before. When they mention W.E. Fairbairn as being an instructor, the description comes from Knights of the Floating Silk from George Langeland, and again it's that off duty his conversation was limited to 2 words, description, which is inaccurate and has been perpetuated in so many books, including this official government publication, which I think is terrible. One of the things that they mention is that the SOE had a lot of equipment facilities, as we know, different stations that produce specialised equipment. But one of the things was that they had a section packing containers to be paradropped into occupied territory, and this was done at an RAF base, and it was done behind curtains, because the rest of the RAF weren't allowed to see the people doing it and also what was in the containers, and this became rather unwieldy. So eventually they started the special parachute equipment section, and it was a dedicated unit mainly using Women's Royal Air Force personnel. Another thing mentioned in the book is the devices catalogue of special devices, which coded all of the equipment that was available, so it could be ordered via radio with just a simple set of digits, and the catalogue had a description of all the different things that were available, and one item that was very popular was carborundum grease, which could be inserted into mechanical components such as railway engines, and inside factories dedicated to Nazi war production, and it would the grease contained carborundum, and it would gradually wear away at the bearings and so on, and the machines would become inoperable. And another that was favoured by some groups was itching powder, which could be introduced into the laundries of German military personnel, and it would affect their clothes. Obviously you're not going to win a war doing this, but it was all part of the kind of pinprick effort. Then the main part of the book is the syllabus, which is based mainly on STS 103 Camp X. There's a complete introduction, and it starts off with all of the different sections, talks about the whole syllabus that's going to be presented, and the first part of it is camp arrangements, and it's rather interesting because it tells you more or less how the trainees were expected to behave and so on. On arrival in camp, you will be issued with battle dress and the necessary accessories. This uniform will be worn during all working periods for the following reasons. Security. This is a military establishment. For the benefit of local inhabitants and visiting tradesmen, it is considered advisable for the military appearance of the camp to be consistently maintained. So just things like that, which give an insight into how the whole setup was organised. All the camps all the training centres were organised on military lines, and they had senior military officers running them. And this sometimes, because they were used to administration, but this sometimes was a bit of a drawback, because a lot of them were set in their ways. They didn't understand the irregular warfare. They were more used to the military, and they didn't understand the collection of rather strange individuals that had been selected to be agents. So sometimes that was a problem. One of the items on the syllabus is cover and cover stories, this kind of thing. What's known now for cover for status and cover for action, and it goes into it in some detail. You know, based on some modicum of truth or wholly fictitious and so on, documents that support your cover, etc., etc. Another section is on observation, and this is interesting because it's really to do with situational awareness and mindset. And even at this early stage in the war, they realised that this was a vital subject to introduce to the trainees. Then we have a section, and I think this is one of the reasons why these papers weren't available for so long, on burglary, how to break in to premises, what's now called method of entry, which is interesting. I don't think there's anything in there that a 14-year-old hoodie wouldn't already work out for himself. Also surveillance. Really it's counter surveillance, you know, because the guys are operating in police states mainly. Obviously close combat is a big subject of interest to us, and this was one of the parts of the syllabus that was already in the public domain. It was in the close combat files of Colonel Applegate and so on. So it's basically the it's interesting because one of the things it kind of has, they look to be instructor notes really. Dummies should be provided. German steel helmets are available. And it mentions here using training knives that wood is not permissible because it causes injury. Rubber is unobtainable. This is World War II, and the rubber was a strategic material, and so they used thick rope, which to me doesn't seem a good solution, but it was obviously the one they had. So it goes into the complete syllabus. As I say, it's been well established before. Overall, I would say that what was presented was a very, very complete training program to be an agent. It covered other things, raids, ambushes, searches, that kind of thing. Things like they had lectures on the German Orbat, you know, the enemy troops, the ranks, and unit designations and so on. There's a thing on the German security setup, which, reading it now with what we know about how it really was set up, there were some inaccuracies, but remember they were gleaning it from rather restricted sources. So I think it shows that the SOE did a really or as good a job as they could in training the guys. A very short training period by modern standards. I mean, the equivalent units now, it's not 9 months to a year of training before they would deploy somebody on a task like that. So really interesting book, and I'm glad it's finally available.